the emperor who owned everything and nothing. There is a strange detail buried in the life of Marcus Aurelius that most people skip over. A man who commanded the most powerful army on earth. A man whose word could end a life or build a city. And yet he spent his nights writing private notes to himself, reminding himself not to care what people thought of him. Why would the most powerful man in Rome need to remind himself of that? If validation came from power, he already had more than any man alive. If it came from wealth, his coffers were bottomless. If it came from fame, his name would outlive empires. He had everything a modern man chases through: money, followers, status, and image. And still, alone in his tent at night, he wrote the same warning to himself over and over. That detail is the key to everything that follows, because the mistake most men make when chasing validation isn't that they want too much of it, it's that they misunderstand what it actually is. They think it's a reward. It isn't. It's a mirror. And most men spend their entire lives polishing the reflection instead of asking who is standing in front of it. Let that sit for a moment, because we are about to walk through why this single misunderstanding quietly ruins ambition, friendship, love, and purpose in the modern man's life. And by the end, you will see it is not a flaw of character. It is a trap built into the architecture of the human mind itself. The hunger before the hunger. Long before social media, before advertising, before money itself, there was a simpler currency between men: the glance of approval from the tribe. In the earliest human bands, being seen with respect wasn't vanity, it was survival. A man exiled from the group didn't just lose status, he lost protection, food, shelter, a mate, a future. To be unseen was to be unsafe. This is the root most people never examine. The craving for validation isn't shallow, it's ancient. It's wired into the oldest parts of the brain, the parts that predate language, that predate reason. It runs on the same circuitry as the fear of death. This is why rejection doesn't just sting, it wounds. Why an unanswered message can quietly gnaw at a grown man's mind for hours. Why a stranger's opinion on the internet, someone he will never meet, can alter his mood for a day. The nervous system doesn't know the difference between a modern insult and ancient exile. To the primitive brain, both mean the same thing. You are about to be left to die alone. So the hunger for validation was never irrational. It was, for most of human history, a matter of life and death. But something happened. The tribe disappeared. The clear signals of belonging and respect dissolved into an infinite, formless crowd. And the ancient hunger, built for a world of 50 familiar faces, was suddenly unleashed into a world of billions of strangers. This is where the trap begins. The warrior's paradox. In the philosophy of the samurai, there's a strange and uncomfortable idea. A warrior was taught to fight as though he were already dead, not because life meant nothing, but because a man who fears the judgment of the living can never move with a clear mind. Consider what that means. A swordsman who is thinking about how his stance looks, how his opponent will judge his technique, how the watching lord will perceive his courage, is already defeated before the blade moves. His mind is split. Half of him is fighting the enemy, the other half is fighting for an audience. The masters understood something that modern men have completely forgotten. Divided attention is a kind of death. Not literal death, the death of mastery, the death of presence, the death of power itself. And this is precisely the trap most men fall into every single day, without ever unsheathing a blade. Every time a man checks how many people liked his post, how many viewed his story, how his body looks compared to the man in the mirror of a stranger's screen, He is doing the same thing that samurai were warned against. He is splitting his mind between the task and the audience. And a mind split in two can never fully arrive anywhere. The tragedy is that most men don't even realize they're doing it. They think they're building confidence. In truth, they are quietly handing the steering wheel of their psychology to an audience they cannot see, cannot control, and will never fully satisfy. The Stoic trap beneath the trap. The Stoics had a name for the things that are and are not within a man's control. Marcus Aurelius wrote about it. Epictetus, a former slave who became one of the sharpest minds in Roman philosophy, built his entire teaching around it. Your body, your possessions, your reputation, other people's opinions of you. Epictetus placed all of these outside of your true control, not because they don't matter at all, but because chasing full control over them is chasing a lie. Here is the paradox most men never see. The moment a man begins seeking validation, he unconsciously hands control of his self-worth to something he philosophically already knows he cannot control. He knows, somewhere deep down, that people's opinions shift like weather, and yet he builds his identity on that same shifting weather. It's like constructing a house on a moving tide and being surprised each time the foundation cracks. This is the biggest mistake. Not wanting to be respected, not wanting to be seen, wanting those things is human, even noble in its origin. The mistake is building identity on top of something inherently unstable, then feeling betrayed when it inevitably moves, and it always moves. The monk in the mirror. There is a quieter tradition, less discussed than Stoicism, found in monastic life across cultures, East and West. Monks who withdrew from society weren't running from people. They were running from something more dangerous, the endless hall of mirrors that other people's opinions create in the mind. A monk sitting in silence for years wasn't punishing himself. He was starving a specific hunger on purpose, the same hunger we've been describing, to see what remained of him once the noise was gone. Many who undertook this described something unsettling at first. Without an audience, without eyes to perform for, they didn't feel free. They felt strangely empty, as if a part of their personality had been built entirely out of other people's gazes. And once those gazes disappeared, that part of them disappeared too. This is the terrifying secret hiding underneath the modern chase for validation. For many men, there is no clear self beneath the performance. The confidence, the humor, the toughness, even the ambition, all of it was built as a reflection of what earns approval. Strip away the audience, and what's left can feel like a stranger. This is why solitude terrifies so many modern men more than danger does. Silence forces the question, who are you when no one is measuring you? Most men never sit still long enough to find out. The modern trap. Infinite mirrors. Now step out of ancient temples and monasteries and into the world men actually live in today. The modern man is surrounded not by one mirror, but by an infinite hall of them. Every scroll, every like, every comment section, every follower count is a tiny mirror reflecting back a fragment of judgment. And the brain, still running on tribal software from 50,000 years ago, treats each fragment as a signal of survival. This is the collision at the heart of modern male anxiety. Ancient hardware, infinite input, a brain built to read the emotional temperature of 50 familiar faces is now trying to process the judgment of millions of strangers every single day without rest. No wonder so many men feel hollow despite outward success. They've optimized their appearance, their income, their status symbols, their bodies, chasing the ancient signal of tribal approval. But the tribe is gone. In its place is an audience that never stops watching and never fully approves. because it isn't a tribe at all. It's a marketplace, and marketplaces don't offer belonging, they offer transactions. Every like is a tiny transaction. Every comment is a tiny transaction. And transactions, no matter how many you collect, can never fill the space meant for belonging. You can be paid in coins forever and still starve, if what you actually needed was food. This is why chasing validation feels endless. It isn't because you haven't gotten enough of it yet. It's because you're using the wrong currency to buy something that was never for sale in the first place. The turning point. Here is where the deeper cause finally reveals itself, the one hiding underneath everything we've walked through. Men don't actually crave the validation itself. They crave the internal state that validation used to produce, back when it meant something real. The feeling of being safely, unquestionably part of something. Belonging, respect earned through shared struggle, a sense of contribution that could be seen by people who actually knew you. Modern validation doesn't produce that state. It produces a flicker of it, a dopamine flare that mimics belonging without delivering it. And like anything that mimics a real need without satisfying it, it creates craving instead of contentment. The brain, tasting the flicker, assumes more of the same thing will finally deliver the real feeling. It never does, so it asks for more, and more, and more. This is the exact mechanism behind addiction, not just to substances, but to attention itself. A man checking his notifications 40 times a day isn't weak. He is running a very old survival program, at war with a very new and unnatural environment. The mistake isn't in the wanting. The mistake is thinking the next hit of approval will be the one that finally satisfies what only real belonging, real purpose, and real self-respect can satisfy. This is why chasing validation, no matter how much of it a man receives, never produces peace. It was never designed to. It was designed to produce more chasing, the discipline of the unseen. There's a concept found in different forms across warrior traditions, the idea that true strength is built where no one is watching. A swordsman who trained only when an audience gathered would never become dangerous. His skill would exist only in performance, hollow the moment the crowd left. But a swordsman who trained alone, in the dark, in the cold, long before anyone cared to watch, became something else entirely. Not a performer, a weapon. This distinction matters more today than at any point in history, because today, almost everything is built to be witnessed. The workout is posted before the muscle has time to grow into meaning. The business idea is announced before it's tested by a single sale. The relationship is displayed before it has survived a single real conflict. Validation seeking doesn't just distort identity, it sabotages mastery itself, because mastery requires thousands of invisible repetitions that offer no audience, no likes, no immediate proof that you're becoming someone. If a man cannot tolerate being unseen, he will always abandon the work in the exact season where the real transformation was about to happen. The silent, unglamorous middle, long before any outside recognition arrives. This is the second layer of the mistake. Not only building identity on unstable ground, but abandoning the very discipline that could have built something real, because that discipline doesn't pay out in approval fast enough. The cost no one talks about. Here is the part almost no one says clearly. A man addicted to validation slowly loses the ability to know what he actually wants. Every decision quietly bends toward what will be approved of, rather than what is true to him. The career chosen because it sounds impressive at dinner parties. The body built to be photographed rather than lived in. The opinions softened, sharpened, or hidden depending on which version earns the warmest reaction from the room. Over years, This produces a very specific kind of man, successful on paper, admired from a distance, and quietly unfamiliar to himself. He can tell you what people think of him with precision. He often cannot tell you with the same precision what he actually believes, wants, or feels underneath the performance. This is not weakness. This is what happens to any human mind that spends decades optimizing for an audience instead of for truth. It is architecture, not character, and it can be rebuilt. The revelation. So here's the deepest layer, the one hiding beneath psychology, beneath history, beneath philosophy. The men who seem to move through life with quiet, unshakable confidence. The ones who don't flinch at criticism and don't inflate at praise are not men who stopped caring what others think. They are men who stopped needing others' opinions to know who they are. That distinction is everything. Marcus Aurelius didn't write those private reminders because he had defeated the human need for respect. He wrote them because he understood something most men never confront directly. The need for approval never fully disappears. What can change is whether a man's sense of self depends on it. The goal was never to become a man no one judges. That man doesn't exist and never will. The goal is to become a man whose center of gravity sits inside himself, so firmly that outside judgment can visit, can even sting for a moment, but cannot move him from where he stands. This is what the ancient warriors trained for in solitude, what the monks searched for in silence, what the Stoics wrote about by candlelight in tents on the edges of empires. Not the absence of the human hunger for approval, but the refusal to let that hunger sit on the throne where only self-respect belongs. The biggest mistake men make chasing validation was never wanting to be seen. It was forgetting to first become someone worth being seen by their own eyes, in private, with no one watching, when there was nothing to gain from the performance and no punishment for dropping it. Because eventually every mirror the world offers will crack, fade, or turn away. The applause will quiet. The algorithm will move on. The crowd, as it always has throughout history, will forget. And when that happens, a man is left with the only audience that was ever permanent to begin with, himself. The question worth sitting with long after this fades from your mind is simple, and it will not feel comfortable. If every like, every follower, every impressed reaction from a stranger disappeared tomorrow, and no one was left to witness anything you did, would you still want to become the man you're becoming? Or were you only ever building him for the mirror?